Rugby World Cup 1995. Last night in a live stream, I went back and watched this game for the first time since 1995. It is the first Rugby World Cup which I had ever seen live or at the time when I was probably, I think, 11, 12? Either way, I was still pretty young. Probably didn't really know what was going on, except that New Zealand couldn't get a drop goal to equalise or win the game. So yeah, it was an interesting one for me as a Kiwi to go back and watch this one. It's one of those games which still lives on as a pretty bitter memory here in New Zealand for losing that game. Some big name players in that All Black squad who couldn't get a Rugby World Cup victory. There were no tries in the game. It was 15-12, settled with penalties and drop goals for Mertens and Stransky for both sides. But yeah, I'll go over some of the kind of notes that I took while I was watching the game. I couldn't find any stats for this game, so I'll have to kind of just do it based on the feel. And yeah, you guys can let me know your memories of this game and what you thought about it generally. So, I mean, it started off not too bad for the All Blacks. They actually opened the scoring with a penalty to Mertens, made it 3-0, and a few minutes later, Mertens missed a drop goal, which went short. It was interesting to see how regularly the All Blacks opted for the droppy, and it's one thing I noticed when I watched the '87 final recently as well, is that the All Blacks were a team which was pretty keen on taking three from the boot, from the drop goal, when possible. So I'm not sure when it shifted, because if you look at like that game against South Africa a couple of years ago here in Wellington, when the All Blacks kind of seemed incapable of going for a drop goal, and there was much criticism of them for that. I'm not sure at one point in time, maybe it was after this game because we missed a few drop goals, that the All Blacks became a kind of tries-only team, tries and penalties. But, yeah, I mean, obviously Dan Carter slotted some in 2015. But generally, as I've watched the All Blacks in my adult life, they've not really been a drop goal team, but they were opting for the drop goal fairly regularly in this game. However, there was only one that was successful. Not so for the Springboks. So yeah, All Blacks had a chance to make it 6-0. But not quite. Stransky got his first penalty on 12 minutes to make it 3 apiece, and it was kind of impressive for the Boks because in the opening stanza, you felt like most of the game was played in the Springboks half, and the Boks did well to go down the other end and pick up points, I think maybe on their first or second visit into All Blacks territory. Mertens did kick one in response 2 minutes later, so the Boks would have been disappointed to concede points pretty much immediately after scoring. So the All Blacks were back in front 6 points to 3. I noticed that the kicking for territory for both sides was fairly good. There were the odd miss kick. I think Stransky had one poor kick during the game where he kicked it out on the full. Zinzan also kicked one out on the full, which was a bit of a weird one because I know Zinzan was fairly skilled for a forward in terms of skill set, which you might not expect. The one time he did put boot to ball, it sure didn't pay off. I also noticed that the All Blacks line out was very bad in this game. It was bad, and the South Africans were picking them off at key moments. There was one line out the All Blacks had. Again, it's on about maybe 20 minutes. They didn't have a clock up during the game, so you can't write down when it exactly happened. But All Blacks were like between 5 and 7 meters out, and maybe more than 5, maybe 6 to 8 meters out. It was an attacking line out right on the Springboks goal line. All Blacks just couldn't win the ball on their own line out. It was a golden opportunity. That being said, as good as the South Africans were at pinching some of the All Blacks line-out ball, their scrum was even better, man. Their scrum was dominant pretty much the whole game. They were able to wheel it the way they wanted it in terms of distributing the ball, and they were just able to crunch the All Blacks sometimes at scrum time. They were held up. Again, it would have been around 25 minutes. And maybe these days the TMO goes to have a look to see if there's a grounding, but the ref definitely said held up. that was about as close as to a try as we got during this game. But after that being held up, the South Africans set a scrum. And from the scrum, they won a scrum penalty and kicked it. So Stransky kicked that to make it 6 apiece. Now, that scrum was that dominant that these days, I feel like if that game is being played and the scrum is that dominant, probably they go for a penalty try. They would probably still keep setting scrums. Maybe not in a Rugby World Cup final, because you just take the points when they're on offer. But the scrum was really dominant. If they were thinking about going ultra aggressive, you set another scrum and go to maybe get one of the other props yellow carded and potentially a 7-pointer. When the All Blacks did get a line-out turnover from the Springboks, though, this is when Zindan kicked it out on the full. So errors was really the story of the day for a lot of the All Blacks were doing. South African scrum was still dominant. I felt like the All Blacks back three was pretty disorganised. Wilson, Osborne, and who was the other winger? Oh, Lomu. Can't forget him. They were struggling sometimes with the high balls being put back, or the balls that Stransky were putting in the back, making them turn around. It wasn't a good look. There was a missed penalty, but to South Africa, but Stransky made up for it with a drop goal on 32 minutes. So the All Blacks got one more attacking line-out chance before half-time. It was on 5 metres. And guess what happened when they threw it in? They lost the line-out ball. So half-time it goes in 9 points to 6. 2 penalties to the All Blacks, 2 penalties and a drop goal to South Africa. Both sides have missed kicks with the boot. Mertens misses another drop goal at the start of the second half, and this kind of becomes a theme. Jeff Wilson, he at one point takes a kick under pressure. He tries to kick it downfield and just kicks it pretty much straight out. And he went off not long after. He seemed pretty unwell. I know you can't talk about this game without talking about the All Blacks being ill. There's all those stories about whether they were deliberately poisoned. I think there's no doubt that some of the guys were pretty crook. But I think if it was, and again, I don't want to get into conspiracy theories because it's mostly just about what happened on the game. But I think if there was some elaborate conspiracy theory, it probably would have come out by now, because generally people can't keep secrets for all that long. But anyway, Jeff Wilson didn't look all that well. Lomu knocked it on in our own half, in the All Blacks half. So again, it was just error, kicking it out on the full, knocking it on. Mertens did take a penalty shot from about 56 metres. I know it's at altitude, but he missed that one, so that's another 3 points missed. And eventually, though, he makes up for it. He snaps a drop goal on 55 minutes to make it 9 apiece. That's when Wilson went off on about 55 minutes. So that's the one drop goal he did get, and it was a quick decision. It wasn't like, I don't remember him being set in the pocket for that one. He just kind of snapped it and pushed it over, which was good to see. But then he missed another one a few minutes later. Jonah was getting a few breaks at times, but never like a full-on bust and tackle. The Springboks were able to keep him pretty quiet with some of their defence. He would get into space, but they would shut him down. At one point, he passed the ball into touch when he was kind of trying to offload in the tackle. Mertens missed another drop goal, like pretty much directly in front, a few minutes before 80 minutes was up. That was probably the All Blacks' best chance to win it, despite the errors, the knock-ons, the poor line-out, the scrum under a lot of pressure from those big Springbok forwards. He had a drop goal attempt more or less as easy as it'll get, and he couldn't put it over. I think it was Stransky that was charging him down for that one. Maybe he put him off, or was it Van der Westhuizen? I forget, but either way, he missed it. So best chance of the game at full time is 9 apiece. Mertens puts the All Blacks in front, so the All Blacks still managed to go in front with a 48-metre kick for Mertens, so 12 points to 9, but then Stransky kicks one to make it even, 12 points apiece. And then Stransky kicks the winning drop goal from a scrum. Mertens tried to shut him down, but couldn't put the pressure on. And 15-12. There was still quite a few minutes to go, more than 5 minutes to play when it was that score, but the All Blacks under pressure, man, they couldn't get out of jail. Mark Ellis knocked it on. The ABs got done for obstruction. Stransky missed a penalty to pretty much put it beyond doubt, or at least it would have been a try needed to win it. Converted try, but either way, the All Blacks were down their own half anyway and couldn't muster anything. They couldn't even muster like phases together. So it ended with a bit of a messy scrum at the end, which was a bit of a letdown, I guess, that it ended in a messy way. But still, the result was the result, man. 15 points to 12. I would say, like, firstly, congratulations to the 95 Springboks for getting that job done. I remember being incredibly disappointed as a kid. I couldn't believe how many times we missed the drop goals. Interestingly, Wikipedia says that Mertens only took 2, but I counted like him missing multiple drop goals. I mean, Stransky didn't have a perfect day with the boot, but he certainly had a better day than Mertens. The South African forwards really fronted up. They managed to keep the All Blacks backs relatively in check. I thought the All Blacks backs did create more chances overall, but just their errors, man, knock-ons and whatnot were really a killer. And the South African scrum probably won the Springboks the game alongside their defence. A few differences from the previous Rugby World Cups, a few things the same. There was no pitch invasion at the end of the game, 91 and 87, now that I've seen those games. All the fans rushed to the pitch at the end of the game, not in 95. A few things that were different. Also, parachute guys coming down to congratulate the Springboks. I said congratulations Springboks of South Africa. That was pretty cool. There were still guys smoking in the stadium, which I don't think we'll see at the next World Cup in 99. But yeah, 95, they're still allowed to smoke in the stadium, which was just a wee bit different. I don't remember that as a kid, funnily enough. Maybe I just didn't care. But yeah, I thought Francois Pienaar spoke really well when he was interviewed at the game at the end. He's a big man. Like, you think even I didn't realise how big he is. He shook hands with Jonah at the end. There's not much difference between them, man. They're both massive, massive guys. It is sad to think how many of these guys have passed away. More of the South African guys. Van der Westhuizen, Small, Kriya, but Jonah's passed away as well. So, that's kind of sad to think of. But for that game, that was the game of their lives for the Springbok guys, and they really did a job. All Blacks, sick or not, too many mistakes. Just can't be doing that. So, I put no South African scrum, stolen line-out ball, New Zealand knock-ons, and miss kicks. Costly. You can't win a game. The fact that it went to extra time made it a bit of a nail-biter. Again, no tries, which was a bit of a surprise, but the Springboks did have the best chance to score throughout the game. All Blacks opting for the boot a lot, but overall not that successful. So, 1995 Rugby World Cup. I know a lot of Kiwis wouldn't be able to bring themselves to watch that again, but like I said, I live streamed it with a couple of beers in hand, so that got me through it, and it was genuinely interesting to go back and watch this game, since I haven't watched it since I was a kid. So good game. I still need to go and watch 99 at some point, but with lockdown on, I'm pretty sure I'll have the time. So you guys let me know your thoughts on this game. As I said, let me know your memories of this one. Obviously, the Springboks' first World Cup for them. And, they seem to celebrate pretty well at the end. I did watch all the post-match stuff, so the post-match interview with Pienaar lifting the cup, Nelson Mandela being there, them walking around the stadium. I did appreciate the All Blacks guys coming out to kind of salute the fans as well, which was cool. So in a losing effort, that was good from them. But, as I said, Francois Pienaar spoke really well, and that was kind of cool stuff to see. It must have been pretty inspiring for all South Africans at that time to get that result, as disappointing as it was for us Kiwis. But you guys let me know your thoughts. Give me a like for watching this one, man. This was a pretty painful one. The emotions were there at the end, just the frustrating nature of it, watching the All Blacks make mistakes, but then even I can appreciate Pienaar lifting the cup and the guys celebrating. So, Anyway, guys, talk to you again soon. Take it easy. Stay safe.